I could scarcely process what I was seeing when that bold stranger strode toward our table as though he owned the entire room. Without hesitation, he seized my wife's hand. The same wife who had already betrayed me leaned forward with a smirk of cruel amusement and taunted, "Why waste your time with this fragile weakling? Dance with me first, and I'll show you what it means to be with a real man." His arrogance spread like venom in the air. I forced myself to stay composed, my expression steady, my breathing controlled, but inside, every nerve was pulled taut, like a bowstring ready to snap. In one swift motion, my hand shot out. I clamped down on his wrist and twisted with precise force. The sound that followed was sharp and sickening, the unmistakable crack of bone yielding under pressure. The entire restaurant fell silent at once. He collapsed to the floor, writhing, clutching his mangled hand, while horrified gasps rippled across the room. The setting only made the moment more surreal. This wasn't just any restaurant, it was a sanctuary of luxury, where ambition and indulgence mingled over vintage wine. Golden light from ornate chandeliers bathed the polished mahogany in a warm glow, glinting off crystal glasses that sparkled like jewels. A soft piano melody drifted through the air, elegant and composed. Yet tonight, the atmosphere felt suffocating, as though I were trapped in a gilded cage. Across from me sat Amal, the very picture of refinement. Her jet-black hair was styled in delicate waves, her scarlet satin gown hugging her figure with flawless grace. To anyone else, she might have looked untouchable, but to me, her beauty was nothing more than a carefully painted mask. Behind her artful makeup and poised demeanor, I saw only emptiness. The late nights at her law firm. The hushed phone calls that went dead the moment I entered the room. The endless excuses stacked one upon another. All of it had led us here. Tonight was meant to be a chance at reconciliation, a fragile attempt to mend what was broken. Instead, it revealed the truth with merciless clarity. The shadow that loomed over our table should have been my warning. When I looked up, there he stood, mid-30s, broad-shouldered, dressed with the confidence of someone who knew how to command attention. His tailored navy suit clung perfectly, his tie a precise knot, and his eyes a glacial blue that sliced straight past me, locking solely on my wife. "Amal," he said smoothly, his voice coated in charm but dripping with conceit. "Didn't expect to run into you tonight." Her hand froze midair, wine glass trembling slightly. Her eyes flicked between us, betraying a flicker of panic before she found her voice. "Lucas," she whispered, almost breathless. "What are you doing here?" "Just enjoying the city," he replied with an easy grin. Then, without acknowledging me, he reached for her hand again and tightened his grip. "Why waste your time with him? Come with me. I'll show you what you deserve." The lively hum of conversation in the restaurant died instantly. Every head turned toward us, as if the chandeliers above had become spotlights illuminating a stage. Amal tried to pull away, but Lucas only clutched her harder. My anger, once searing, cooled into something precise and deadly. I stood, the scrape of my chair against the polished floor cutting through the silence like a blade. My voice was low, exact, and unshakable. "You have 3 seconds to let her go." He sneered. "And if I don't?" I didn't answer with words. My grip clamped around his wrist, and with controlled certainty, I twisted. The brutal snap echoed through the room, followed by his scream as he collapsed, his face twisted with agony. Amal gasped, horror etched across her flawless features. The other diners sat frozen, forks suspended in midair, glasses trembling in their hands. "Magnus, what are you doing?" Amal whispered, her voice shaking with disbelief. I didn't look at her. I didn't answer. I crouched low, meeting Lucas's wide, pain-glazed eyes. My voice came out soft, almost intimate, as though I were whispering a secret. "This is just the start. You've crossed a line, and I promise you'll regret it." He clenched his jaw, forcing out words through clenched teeth. "You'll pay for this." I rose slowly, towering over him, then turned my gaze to Amal. She sat pale and motionless, fear tightening every muscle in her body. "We're leaving," I said flatly. She hesitated, but my tone left no room for protest. Reluctantly, she stood. Her heels clicked far too loudly in the suffocating silence as we walked out, leaving the stunned restaurant behind us. The drive home was unbearable. Silence pressed down heavier than any words could. The air inside the car was thick, suffocating. Amal sat stiffly in the passenger seat, her hands locked together so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Her eyes stared straight ahead, unwilling to meet mine, as though looking anywhere else might cause her to shatter. When we pulled into the garage, I cut the engine and turned to her, my voice cold and sharp. "Talk." She flinched at the command, shoulders jerking as if struck. "Magnus, I don't know what you expect me to say." "I want the truth," I said, leaning closer, my tone icy. "Who is he? And how long?" Tears welled in her eyes, but they meant nothing to me. My sympathy had long since been scorched away. 6 months, she whispered at last, voice breaking. "It began 6 months ago." Though I had already suspected, hearing her admit it carved through me like a blade. I forced my breathing steady, holding myself under control. "And tonight? Was this your way of humiliating me? Throwing it in my face?" "I didn't know he'd be there," she cried. "I swear." "Enough." My voice cut her off like steel. "I saw how you looked at him. You knew." Her sobs filled the garage, but I felt nothing. Grief had passed. In its place, cold calculation began to take root. By dawn, Geneva's skyline stretched silver across the horizon as I sat in my office planning. Lucas would be the first to fall. His social media paraded images of wealth and power, private jets, champagne, bespoke suits. But with the right contacts, I uncovered the truth, a crumbling empire beneath the facade. Mountains of debt. Failed ventures. Lawsuits circling like vultures. Piece by piece, I collected everything. Amal moved through her days as if nothing had changed, oblivious to the storm building around her. Meanwhile, I gathered it all: messages, photographs, receipts. Proof sharp enough to ruin lives. When my plan was complete, I set it loose. At a glittering charity gala, Lucas arrived arm in arm with Geneva's elite. By the end of the night, his name was splashed across headlines: fraud, corruption, extortion. His accounts frozen, partners abandoning him, his reputation crumbling into ash. Then came Amal's reckoning. I slid divorce papers across the table. She tried to object, but I had already dismantled her facade. The prenup left her with nothing. Even her reputation collapsed, shredded by whispers in the very circles she once coveted. In court, she stood hollow, her strength stripped away. "Magnus," she whispered after the final signing, "I know I hurt you, but was all of this truly necessary?" I met her gaze without flinching. "Every choice has consequences." Tears clung to her lashes as she turned and walked out, a shadow of the woman I had once loved. Months passed. My home grew quiet, free of her presence. I poured my energy into work, expanding across Europe, rebuilding with sharper vision. The wound she left behind became a scar, painful once, but now a mark of survival. At another gala months later, I felt a light touch on my shoulder. Turning, I met Isabelle Fournier, a historian. Elegant yet unpretentious, her confidence was natural, her laughter genuine, her conversation intelligent without pretense. For the first time in years, something stirred within me. That night, I stood on my balcony with a glass of wine, Geneva's skyline glittering beneath the night. My thoughts drifted back to betrayal, what it had taken from me, and what it had forged in me. Pain had reshaped me into something stronger, steadier. Lifting my glass to the stars, I whispered a vow that only the night could keep.